Let's get right into this. We live in a world that universally celebrates intelligence, right? We just naturally assume that having a high IQ is the ultimate golden ticket, that it somehow makes life completely effortless and smooths out all the bumps in the road. But what if the very mind that allows you to solve complex equations or see brilliant patterns also creates burdens that most people simply cannot comprehend? Welcome to this explainer. Today we are unpacking the heavy crown of a high IQ, and we're going to walk through the profound silent struggles that come right along with it.
Consider this thought for a moment. Being highly intelligent sounds like a blessing, but the truth is, intelligence comes with its own silent struggles. I really want you to hear that with all the gravity it deserves, because psychology actually shows us that many incredibly intelligent people face profound emotional, social, and even existential challenges. And these are complex battles, but they're fought quietly, deep in the background of everyday life. The people around you might see the achievements, sure, but they rarely see the immense cognitive weight you're carrying just to get through a normal Tuesday.
You see, there's a stark contrast between society's perception of intelligence and the actual reality of living with it. We usually assume that if you're smart, you solve problems faster, you succeed without really trying, and everything just comes easily to you. But the reality? It's the hidden toll. It isn't just about acing a test or advancing quickly at work. It's about navigating a world that often feels entirely out of sync with how your brain actually operates. You're processing things on a completely different wavelength, and that discrepancy creates a lot of friction. So, let's break down exactly what these real, everyday struggles look like.
Section 1. A restless, overactive mind.
So what actually happens when a brilliant mind simply never ever shuts off? Well, the very first sign of this restless mind is that you overthink absolutely everything. Because your brain processes information so incredibly efficiently, it rarely knows how to hit the brakes. You find yourself analyzing passing words, fleeting situations, and even your own emotions far, far too deeply. Picture being at a casual dinner party. While everyone else easily moves on from an offhand remark, you're still there mentally, replaying every single possibility, dissecting the exact tone of voice, and predicting every potential outcome. It's a relentless mental loop. It can literally turn an innocuous text message into an hours-long decoding session.
And psychologists actually have a specific term for where this kind of overthinking leads. It's called analysis paralysis. It's this fascinating trap where your intelligence actually becomes a bottleneck for everyday choices. When you have the cognitive capacity to instantly see 10 different branching outcomes for a single, minor decision, picking just one path becomes agonizing. Too much thinking stops making things clearer. Instead, it makes taking action incredibly difficult. Deciding on something as simple as what movie to watch or where to grab lunch can honestly feel like solving a complex algorithm, just because your brain refuses to pick a path without evaluating every single variable first.
Beyond the overthinking, there's also the issue of what your brain actually hungers for. You deeply, deeply crave complexity. Routine tasks or repetitive conversations can literally feel painfully dull. Imagine sitting at work or school doing basic data entry or answering the exact same questions over and over again. Your mind inevitably starts to wonder. And here's why this really matters. People might see you zoning out, procrastinating, or losing motivation, and they might unfairly label you as lazy or disorganized. But it's not laziness at all. It is an intense biological need for mental stimulation. Without that complexity, your highly active brain simply starves and disengages.
This relentless engine of a mind also leads to questioning everything. And I mean everything. Even yourself. You simply don't accept things at face value. You question authority. You deconstruct established traditions. You even interrogate your own thoughts and motives. Now, don't get me wrong. This deep curiosity is exactly what drives incredible human innovation. But on a personal level, it fundamentally alters how you view the world. It is straight up exhausting to constantly deconstruct the reality around you. And it can leave you feeling profoundly disconnected from people who just prefer simple, comfortable answers and unquestioned routines.
So, we've looked at the internal storm, right? The overthinking, the craving for complexity, the constant, exhausting questioning of reality. But what happens when this hyper-awareness actually meets the outside world? Let's move forward and see how this internal state builds into our next set of challenges.
Section 2. The social and relational divide.
When that internal friction meets the outside world, the struggle to connect becomes very, very real. You naturally crave deep, meaningful conversations. Superficial small talk? It feels like a massive waste of your cognitive energy. Honestly, it feels like a performance, a draining script you have to read just to politely participate in society. But here is the isolating reality of that.
Most people just don't want to dive into deep philosophy, complex psychology, or abstract ideas over a casual lunch chat. They just want light and easy. And that mismatch can leave you feeling completely isolated and deeply misunderstood, even when you're standing right in the middle of a crowded room.
Compounding this isolation is the simple fact that you are often just too aware of everything. Intelligent people frequently notice patterns, micro-behaviors, and subtle emotional shifts that everyone else completely misses. And sure, while this hypervigilance is incredibly useful for problem-solving in a professional setting, it definitely has a dark side in your personal life. It makes you far more sensitive to negativity, to dishonesty, and to manipulation in your social circles. You're the person who can feel the heavy tension in a room before anyone else has even spoken a single word.
Think about this. It's like your brain sees every hidden motive, and that can be exhausting. You simply can't turn it off. You see the subtext behind what people are saying, the unspoken reasons they're acting a certain way, the slight, telling shifts in their body language. This relentless social awareness acts like a heavy application constantly running in the background of your brain, quietly draining your emotional battery every single day.
So if just existing and connecting with others in everyday social dynamics is this exhausting, how on earth do you handle the massive expectations that society inevitably places on a quote-unquote smart person?
Section 3. The Trap of Perfectionism. The immense, suffocating pressure to succeed often boils down to 5 sharp, painful words. I thought you were smart. It's a sharp sting, isn't it? Because people expect you to always perform perfectly. A single, completely normal human mistake can trigger intense anxiety. When people drop this phrase, even if they're just joking, it weaponizes your intelligence right against you. It sends this quiet, terrible message that your worth is entirely tied to your flawless output, and that any failure is a fundamental betrayal of who you are supposed to be.
And that external pressure directly feeds into a very real psychological phenomenon we call imposter syndrome. Now, this isn't just feeling a little nervous before a big presentation. This is a deeply rooted anxiety and an ever-present fear of failure. It's that persistent internal monologue whispering that despite all your actual achievements and accolades, you might not actually be as capable as everyone thinks you are. It's the absolute terror that one day you'll be found out as a fraud. The constant pressure to succeed literally makes you doubt your own proven, objective abilities.
Over time, this imposter syndrome spirals into what psychology calls maladaptive perfectionism. You start setting impossibly high standards for yourself. This toxic belief takes hold that anything less than absolute perfection is a complete and utter failure. Think about it. Have you ever rewritten a simple 3-sentence email 10 times because it didn't sound smart enough? Or scrapped an entire project because one minor detail wasn't flawless? That isn't a healthy drive for excellence. It's a punishing internal metric that guarantees you will never feel good enough, and it leads straight into a brick wall of burnout and deep frustration.
So let's take a step back. When you constantly carry the weight of these immense expectations, when you're battling perfectionism and imposter syndrome day in and day out, what exactly happens to your emotional bandwidth? What is going on beneath the surface when your tank is just running on empty?
Section 4. The Weight of Empathy.
Pop culture loves to portray geniuses as cold, calculating, and totally detached from feelings. But the psychological reality is usually the exact opposite. Highly intelligent people are very often highly empathetic, leaving them feeling incredibly emotionally heavy. Because your brain processes complexity so well, you understand other people's struggles deeply. Honestly, too deeply. You absorb their pain. Psychologists actually call this emotional contagion. It's when you take on the emotions of others without even realizing you're doing it. You end up carrying an immense emotional weight on your shoulders, absorbing the anxiety and sadness of the room, carrying a heavy burden that isn't even yours to bear in the first place.
Section 5. Embracing your rare gift.
So, having mapped out all these heavy burdens, the overthinking, the isolation, the crippling perfectionism, the deep, draining empathy, where does that actually leave us? Well, an intelligent mind isn't a curse. It just requires a very specific toolkit to thrive. First, you need balance, actively recognizing when to step back from the mental edge and just let your brain rest. Second, boundaries, fiercely protecting your emotional bandwidth from that emotional contagion and from the unreasonable expectations of everyone around you. And third, the right people. Finding those rare, wonderful individuals who actually want to dive into the deep end with you, where you never have to shrink yourself down or apologize for your complexity.
I really want to leave you with this incredibly important thought today. You're not too much. You just think deeper than most. If this explainer felt a little personal to you, let that be a moment of true validation. The loneliness, the confusion, the pain of seeing the world in such complex, overwhelming layers, it is all completely valid. But it simply means you are operating on a frequency that requires more care, not less.
Which brings us to a final question I really want you to carry with you as you go. How will you use your incredible depth of thought to shape your world today? Now that you can clearly recognize these silent struggles for what they actually are, you can finally stop fighting your own mind and start leveraging it. Reframe those struggles into profound strengths, set your boundaries, and step fully into the brilliant potential of your rare gift. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I will see you next time.